I retired and bought a cabin in the woods so I could finally be alone with nature. No noise, no people, just the wind in the treetops. Then my son-in-law called and said, "My parents are moving in with you. If you don't like it, come back to the city." I didn't argue, but I left a surprise waiting that would flip their entire plan sideways. Before we continue, please subscribe to the channel and write in the comments what time it is where you are now. The keys felt heavier than they should have. I stood inside Rebecca Marsh's real estate office in Redwood Falls, holding them while she stapled together documents I'd already forgotten. Outside the window, March wind shoved tumbleweeds across the parking lot. "Congratulations, Mr. Mercer." Rebecca smiled like she'd just handed me a kingdom. Maybe she had. "You're officially a property owner in Cascade County." The cashier's check, $185,000, left my account that morning. 40 years of overtime shifts, skipped vacations, packed lunches. 4 decades compressed into 6 figures, now transformed into 800 square feet of timber and silence, 12 miles from civilization. "Thank you." I pocketed the keys and shook her hand. My fingers were steadier than expected. The drive from her office took me west on Highway 16, then north onto roads that narrowed with each bend. Pavement became gravel. Gravel became dirt. Cell service slipped from 4 bars to 2, then 1. I stopped at a general store and bought coffee, bread, eggs, butter. The clerk asked if I was visiting. "Living," I said. She nodded like I'd said something profound. The final 2 miles climbed through pine forest so dense the afternoon sun barely pierced through. When the cabin appeared in a small clearing, I pulled over and shut off the engine. Elk. 4 of them, grazing about 50 yards beyond the porch. They lifted their heads, studied my truck, then went right back to eating. One flicked an ear at a fly. I stayed in the truck for 5 minutes watching them. No honking, no sirens, no neighbors shouting through thin apartment walls. The cabin matched the photos exactly. Weathered cedar logs, green metal roof, stone chimney. Small, yes, but mine. I unlocked the door and stepped inside. The air smelled like pine sap and old wood smoke. One main room with a kitchenette. A bedroom barely big enough for a double bed. A bathroom with a shower stall I'd have to enter sideways. Perfect. I unloaded the truck slowly, methodically. Tools on the pegboard above the workbench, hammer, wrenches, handsaw, each in its assigned spot. Books stacked on the shelf by subject. History, engineering manuals, 3 novels I'd been meaning to read for a decade. Coffee maker positioned where the morning light would hit it first. Every item placed with intention, creating order from the chaos of moving boxes. By the time I finished, the sun was dropping. I brewed coffee, too late in the day, didn't care, and carried it to the porch. The rocking chair I'd bought specifically for this moment creaked under my weight. The elk had moved deeper into the clearing. A hawk circled overhead, riding thermals. I called Emily. "Dad." Her voice came bright and immediate. "Are you there? Did you get it?" "Signed the papers this morning," I said. "I'm on the porch now watching elk." "I'm so proud of you." Warmth filled her tone, tightening something in my chest. "You earned this. 40 years. I sipped my coffee. 40 years dreaming of mornings where I drink coffee and watch wildlife instead of highway traffic. You deserve every bit of peace." She paused. "Erin's been so stressed with work lately. Sometimes I forget what peaceful even feels like." Something in the way she said it made me pause. "Everything okay?" "Oh, fine. You know how it is. Middle management pressure." She laughed, but it was thin. "When can I visit?" "Anytime, honey. You know that." We talked another 10 minutes. Her students, her garden, safe topics. After we hung up, I watched the sun paint the mountains orange and purple. The coffee had gone cold, but I drank it anyway. The phone rang an hour later. My parents lost their house. Erin didn't bother with hello. His voice had that flat corporate tone he used during conference calls. "They're moving in with you for a couple of months until they find a place." My hand tightened on the armrest. "Wait, what?" "They'll stay with you temporarily. I'll text their arrival time." "Erin, I just bought this place. It's barely. For a couple months. Until they find something. I bought this place for solitude. I spent my entire retirement on. Then you should have stayed in Denver, he snapped. Friday morning. I'll send the details. The line went dead. I sat holding the phone, staring at the clearing where the elk had been. They'd moved on. Smart animals. My knuckles had turned white around the armrest. I forced myself to release it, flex my fingers, breathe. Inside, I poured another coffee I didn't want and sat at the kitchen table. From my jacket pocket, I pulled a small engineering notepad, the grid paper kind I'd carried for 40 years, for sketches and calculations. I began writing. Not emotional rambling. Questions. Time estimates. Resource assessments. The cabin keys lay next to the notepad. An hour earlier, they had symbolized freedom. Now they symbolized something else entirely. I picked them up, felt their weight, set them down deliberately. 40 years I'd been the reasonable one. The peacemaker. The man who swallowed inconvenience to keep harmony. Not anymore. Dawn crept through the kitchen windows and found me still at the table. Empty coffee cups formed a semicircle around my notes, which had grown dense with lists, diagrams, rewritten questions. I hadn't slept, and didn't need to. My mind felt sharper than it had in years. Focused. Clean. I brewed fresh coffee and studied my notes. Then cleaned up, loaded the truck, and drove back toward Redwood Falls. The ranger station at Glacier Ridge National Park sat 20 minutes west, a modern building designed to blend with the landscape. Inside, displays showed wolf packs, bear ranges, elk migration routes. A ranger, maybe 40, with the weathered face of someone who spent more time outdoors than in, looked up from his desk. Help you? I just moved up from Denver, I said. Bought a place off County Road 16. Beautiful area. He smiled. Watch your food storage. Bears get active when spring hits. What about wolves? Heard they're back. The ranger walked to a large wall map. Reintroductions going well. They're usually shy but have an incredible sense of smell. They can detect prey or food from miles. You hunting? No, just curious. Want to be prepared. Smart. He handed me a pamphlet. Don't leave attractants out. Unless you want visitors. I took notes, wind direction, pack territories, seasonal patterns, acting naive, exactly how a newcomer should. Afterward, I headed to an outdoor supply store. Taxidermy lined the walls. The camera section sat between hunting gear and home security systems. Looking for wildlife cameras, I said. Want to monitor bear activity near my cabin. The clerk showed me 2 motion-activated models with night vision and cellular connectivity. These'll do. Folks use them all the time. $3.40, he said. I paid cash. Back at the cabin Wednesday afternoon, I installed them with precision. One overlooking the driveway. One aimed at the front porch. Tested motion sensors, checked signal strength. Adjusted angles until coverage was flawless. Hide the cameras enough to avoid detection. Position for maximum capture. Test. Adjust. Verify. Both cameras sync to my phone, weak signal, but functional. Thursday morning, I returned to town. At the butcher shop, a place that mostly served ranchers, I said, need 20 pounds of beef scraps. Organ meat, fat trimmings for dogs. The butcher didn't blink. You got it. $45 later, I loaded 2 coolers into the truck. The smell hit immediately, blood, fat, raw flesh. Thursday afternoon, standing in the clearing behind the cabin, I checked wind direction the old-fashioned way, wetting my finger and holding it up. Wind blew from the west. Perfect. I carried the coolers 30 yards from the cabin and placed the meat in 3 piles, spread to maximize scent dispersion. Not random. Calculated. Close enough to draw animals toward the area, far enough they'd focus on the piles, not the building. I wasn't trying to harm anyone. I was trying to educate them. Inside, I locked windows, shut unnecessary power, set the thermostat low to protect the property while my plan unfolded. I paused at the door, took one last look, and left without hesitation. The drive to Denver took 5 hours. I reached my old house, a place I hadn't sold yet, before midnight. Partially furnished. Hollow. Perfect for waiting. I set up my laptop, propped my phone to watch the camera feeds, and waited. Friday morning at 10 o'clock, a sedan appeared on my phone screen. Robert and Linda stepped out, scanning the area with matching expressions of disapproval. The camera mic captured everything. "This is where he's living now." Linda wrinkled her nose. "It smells like pine and dirt." "At least it's free," Robert muttered. "We'll stay a few months. Let Aaron handle the rest." He walked toward the cabin, then froze. Wolves. 3 shapes emerged from the northwest tree line. Gray and brown, moving with measured purpose toward the meat piles. Hungry, not aggressive. Robert's face turned the color of paper. "Get in the car," he shouted. "Now." They scrambled. Linda tripped, caught herself, slammed the car door. Gravel sprayed as they sped off. The wolves barely glanced at them, too focused on the meat. I closed the laptop and sipped my coffee. 20 minutes later, my phone rang. "What did you do?" Aaron's voice vibrated with fury. "My parents nearly got attacked." "I didn't do anything," I said calmly. "This is wolf country. You baited them. You set this up." "Aaron, I live in the wilderness. Wolves live in the wilderness. Maybe you should have asked before deciding your parents could use my home." "You're insane." "You'll what?" I interrupted. "Sue me because wildlife exists in Montana? Good luck. This isn't over." "No," I said. "It's just beginning." I ended the call, set the phone down, and replayed the footage as the wolves finished the meat and slipped back into the forest. Outside my Denver window, mountains rose in the distance. Somewhere up there, my cabin waited. I had been planning defense, but watching that recording again, I realized something had shifted. This wasn't about defense anymore. 2 weeks passed before Aaron made his next move. I spent those days settling into the routine I'd once imagined for myself. Coffee on the porch at dawn, elk wandering lazily through the clearing, reading books I'd postponed for decades. But the peace didn't sit naturally anymore. It felt conditional, temporary, like ice that might crack underfoot at any moment. I checked my phone more often than I liked, kept the camera feeds open on my laptop, listened for unfamiliar vehicles rolling along the dirt road. Mid-April brought warmer afternoons, the first wildflowers pushing through the earth. I was out splitting firewood behind the cabin when my phone buzzed. "Emily." "Dad, please." Her voice broke on the second word. She was crying. Aaron showed me the footage of the wolves. That could have been so much worse. I set down the axe and stepped onto the porch. "Honey, wolves live in these mountains. I didn't create that situation. I warned Aaron this wasn't a safe or appropriate place for his parents." "But you knew they were coming," she said, her voice shaking. "You could have done something to make it safer." The phrasing was rehearsed. Every line sounded like it came straight from Aaron's mouth. My own daughter turned into his messenger. "I bought this place for solitude," I said, keeping my tone steady. "No one asked me if I was willing to host guests. But I'm open to meeting with Robert and Linda to discuss options." "You are?" Her voice softened instantly, hope flooding into it. "Really? I'll meet them in town. Neutral ground. We'll talk." After we hung up, I watched thin clouds drift across the mountains. She genuinely believed she was helping. That made it worse. 2 days later, I drove into Redwood Falls for the meeting. I'd spent both evenings preparing, researching comparable rental prices for rural Montana cabins, printing out 3 copies of a standard short-term rental agreement, reviewing property law basics. I practiced what I'd say in the truck mirror that morning, adjusting my phrasing until it struck the right balance. Firm without hostility, clear without cruelty. The Grizzly Peak Cafe sat on Main Street. Small, local, wooden tables, landscape photographs on the walls, wide windows facing the sidewalk traffic. I arrived 15 minutes early. Chose my seat deliberately. A table near the window, my back to the wall, facing the entrance, comfortably within view of the security camera above the register. I ordered a black coffee and waited. Robert and Linda entered exactly on time. They didn't order anything, just walked straight to my table and sat like they were stepping into a courtroom. I could practically feel Aaron's coaching trailing behind them. "Hello, Robert." "Linda," I said. "Coffee." Robert ignored the offer. "Harold, this has gone on long enough. We need those keys today." "We're not here for coffee," Linda added, her expression sharpened. "We're here because family is supposed to help family." I reached into my folder and slid the rental agreement across the table. The paper whispered across the wood as I aligned it perfectly, tapping it once with my finger. "I agree," I said. "Which is why I've prepared a reasonable proposal." Robert glanced down, then up again, his face reddening. "A rental agreement? You're charging us rent. Market rate for a furnished property in this area. $1,200 monthly. 6-month lease. You want money from your own family?" His voice rose enough that a few patrons turned their heads. "We have nowhere else to go." Linda leaned forward, placing a hand dramatically on her chest. "I never thought you were this kind of person, Harold. Greedy. Just plain greedy." I stood, gathered my folder, and picked up my coffee cup out of sheer habit, good manners separating me from people who expected to be served without reciprocation. "Then we don't have an agreement," I said calmly. "You'll need to find alternative housing. Good afternoon." I nodded toward the barista as I left. In my truck, I sat a moment with my hands on the wheel, breathing evenly until my pulse slowed. Then I started the engine and drove home. That evening, my phone lit up like a weapon aimed straight at me. First call, Cousin Linda, someone I hadn't spoken to in years. "Harold, it's Linda. I heard you're having some difficulties." "Difficulties?" I asked. "From whom?" "Aaron reached out. He's worried about you. Said you're isolated in the mountains. Acting strangely." The strategy clicked instantly. He was building a narrative, planting doubt in as many ears as possible. "Linda, I'm fine," I said. "I retired to Montana. That's all." He said there was an incident with wild animals and you refused to help his parents. Interesting version of events. Thanks for checking in. I hung up and stared at the phone. 20 minutes later, a former colleague from Denver. Same script. Different voice. "You okay, Harold? Aaron says you've been behaving erratically." By the time 8:30 arrived, Emily called, angry this time. "You embarrassed them," she said. "In public. What were you thinking?" "I offered them a fair solution," I said. "They rejected it." "A rental agreement?" "Dad, their family. Aaron's parents. And this is my home," I replied. "My retirement, my one peaceful place, bought with money I saved for 40 years. Dad, Aaron was right. You've changed. You're not the man I know." The words were aimed to cut, and they did. I kept my voice steady, even as something cracked inside. Maybe I have. Or maybe everyone else changed first, and I'm just noticing now. She hung up on me. I sat at the kitchen table holding my phone, darkness settling over the mountains like a heavy blanket. 3 calls in one night, all carrying the same message. Harold Mercer is unstable. Harold Mercer is dangerous. Harold Mercer can't be trusted. My isolation, once my refuge, was being twisted into evidence of incompetence. Aaron wasn't trying to take the cabin anymore. He was trying to destroy my credibility first. Classic manipulation strategy. Isolate the target. Control the narrative. Strike when they're defenseless. I opened my laptop and started typing. Mark Harlow, attorney at law. At 9:47 p.m., I sent the email. Carefully worded. Only facts. No emotion. I asked about property protection, potential claims, asset shielding, elder law concerns. I included a concise timeline, my age, property details, and 3 specific legal questions. Then I poured myself 2 fingers of bourbon, no ice, and headed to the porch. The night air was cold, but I needed it. The stars stretched across the sky like an indifferent witness to human conflict. Somewhere out there, Aaron was planning his next move. I intended to stay ahead. Morning arrived with an email waiting for me. Mark Harlow had responded at 7:15 a.m. He could meet Thursday afternoon. $300 an hour. I confirmed immediately. For the next 3 days, I organized documentation with the same precision I'd applied to 40 years of engineering. Property deed, purchase papers, family diagram, detailed timeline, copies of texts and call logs, printouts of the rental agreement Robert refused, photos, notes, dates. Thursday morning, I placed everything in a leather portfolio and headed out the door. Wednesday night, the phone buzzed again. Emily. Her voice was small, tired. Dad. I'm sorry, I yelled. I'm just overwhelmed. Aaron's been trying so hard. Ever since his dad lost all that money. I stopped walking. Lost money? Oh, you didn't know? Dad, Robert lost $47,000 in online poker. That's why they lost the house. $47,000. I stayed silent. Emily kept talking, unaware of the quake forming inside my mind. And Aaron's been so stressed trying to help them. Talking about solutions for our family. Like reorganizing assets. He mentioned maybe putting your cabin into a family trust so everyone could benefit eventually. A family trust. I felt my jaw clench. When did he suggest that? A few weeks ago. He said it would help with taxes when you, well, in the far future. I see. He said the property value probably already went up since you bought it. Every word slid into place like a puzzle locking shut. Aaron wasn't looking for a place for his parents. He was positioning himself to eventually seize my entire estate. That's why I'm meeting with an attorney, I said. You are? Her voice sharpened. Dad, is that really necessary? At my age? With property worth this much? Yes. We hung up, and I immediately added several pages of notes to my dossier. Robert's gambling. Aaron's pressure disguised as estate planning. Their manipulation of Emily. Every red flag that now glowed neon. Thursday afternoon arrived, and I drove toward Redwood Falls to meet the attorney who would change everything. The next afternoon, I drove into Redwood Falls and parked across from a hardware store on Sheridan Avenue. Mark Harlow's office occupied the second floor above it. Clean windows, professional signage, a place that looked like real work got done there. I sat in the truck for 5 minutes, watching people come and go, grounding myself. Then I picked up my leather portfolio, locked the truck, and went inside. The office interior was simple but polished. Wooden furniture, a wall of law books, framed degrees from the University of Montana, and a large window overlooking Main Street. Harlow stood as I entered, offering a firm handshake. Early 50s, sharp eyes, steady posture, someone who understood both law and people. I laid out my documentation in a precise sequence, property papers first, then the family diagram, then a detailed timeline, each page placed exactly when needed. Harlow reviewed everything silently, taking notes, asking careful clarifying questions. I had answers ready. Years of engineering had made me methodical. Mr. Mercer, he finally said, leaning back in his chair, tapping a pen lightly against his legal pad, I have to say, this is the most organized case file I've seen from a new client in a long time. 40 years as a structural engineer, I said. Documentation prevents disputes. In this case, he replied, documentation is going to protect you significantly. He set his pen down. His tone shifted, more direct. Here's my assessment. Your son-in-law is attempting to lay groundwork for a conservatorship claim. I sat very still. A conservatorship? I asked quietly. To take control of your assets, Harlow explained. The smear campaign, the comments about your behavior, the concerns he's spreading, this is a typical pattern. If he can make you look incompetent, he can petition the court for control over your property. My jaw tightened. He wants my cabin. He wants everything, Harlow corrected. And he wants access before he drowns financially. What's the solution? A revocable living trust with an independent trustee, me, he said. I won't sugarcoat it. It will cost around $2,400 in legal fees. But once the trust is established, your assets become protected. Family pressure becomes irrelevant. They cannot gain access to your property without your permission. Do it, I said. How soon can we start? I'll have the drafts ready in 2 weeks. The meeting lasted 90 minutes. When I left, the sun was sinking lower, but I felt more clarity than I had in months. Following Harlow's advice, I didn't drive straight back to the cabin. Instead, I went to the Redwood Falls Public Library. I signed in at a computer in the back corner, habit, choosing the desk against the wall, where no one could sit behind me, and accessed Colorado property records online. I typed in Emily and Aaron's home address. Downloaded every publicly available mortgage document. And then the number appeared on the screen like a punch. $35,000 home equity line of credit. Opened 8 months ago. Signed only by Aaron. My daughter's signature wasn't there at all. I printed the documents, fingers steady. Added them to my folder. Then I drove back to the cabin in complete silence. That evening, I called Harlow from the porch. "Mark, I found something important. A helic, $35,000, taken out by Aaron without Emily's signature." "That's concerning," Harlow said slowly. "Colorado allows single-spouse helics under certain conditions, but hiding it from the other spouse? That's suspicious. Has she discovered it yet?" "No." "Then this explains everything," he said. "The gambling debt. The desperation. The attempt to get your cabin into a family trust. He's trying to plug multiple financial holes." After we hung up, I spread every document across the kitchen table like a battlefield map. The porch light flickered softly overhead, the only sound the hum of the refrigerator. Aaron didn't just want my cabin. He needed it. Their financial life was crumbling beneath them. I grabbed a yellow legal pad and began drawing lines between facts, a diagram forming, a web of debt, lies, manipulations. I circled key points and wrote questions. Can Harlow investigate legality of the helic? When should Emily learn the truth? How do I protect her without making her feel betrayed? How far will Aaron go when cornered? My phone buzzed. A text from Harlow. "Trust documents ready Monday for initial review." I wrote a final note. Aaron is cornered. Cornered people retaliate. Prepare. 3 weeks later, on a clear Monday in early June, I drove back to Harlow's office for the trust signing. The leather portfolio beside me contained 3 weeks of meticulously organized financial records, all labeled, retirement accounts, property appraisals, life insurance policies, investments, everything. Harlow's assistant had already laid out the trust in a conference room, 43 pages, each with a signature flag. I sat and read every page while Harlow handled emails at his desk. When I finished, he walked over. "This section here," he said, pointing to page 17. "Conditional inheritance for Emily. She inherits only if divorced from Aaron, or if Aaron signs a legal waiver relinquishing all claims to your property." "I understand," I said. "This may cause severe family conflict," he warned. "The conflict already exists," I replied. "This protects her from being exploited." He studied me for a moment. "Aaron will react aggressively when he learns he gets nothing." "Let him," I said. "Everything is legal. He can't touch my property." "You're prepared for escalation?" "I've been preparing since March." He nodded once. "Let's sign." My signature was steady on every page. The notary applied her stamp with a satisfying thud. I wrote a check for the full legal fee and left with a sealed envelope containing all trust documents. The rest of the week, I called my financial institutions methodically, updating beneficiaries. Each conversation followed the same pattern. "Mr. Mercer, you're removing your daughter as direct beneficiary?" "No. I'm assigning my trust as the beneficiary. She inherits through the trust." "And may I ask why?" "Asset protection and estate planning. Also note this change was made voluntarily under legal counsel." A pause. "That's unusual, but I'll add the note." By Friday evening, every account I owned was protected. I crossed the final item off my checklist with quiet satisfaction. 2 weeks later came the call from Emily. "Dad, Aaron's been weird lately. Asking about your finances. Wondering if you updated your will. He got angry when I mentioned you set up a trust. He called it a betrayal." "Why?" I asked carefully. "Would your estate planning betray him?" "That's what I asked him. He just kept saying, 'You're being manipulated by lawyers.'" Did you tell him any details? Just that you set one up. I didn't think it was a secret. Is it? No, I said gently. Not a secret. Just private. What exactly did he say? That you're cutting the family out. Dad, why does he care so much about your trust? That, I said, is a very good question. After hanging up, I called Harlow immediately. Aaron knows about the trust. His response was instant. How soon can you get a medical evaluation? The next day, I was repairing a loose porch rail when Aaron's car barreled up the driveway like a runaway bull, kicking up dust and gravel. He jumped out before the engine stopped, slammed the door, and stormed toward me. I set down my tools, picked up my phone, hit record, and held it at chest level, lens obvious, and pointed at him. He didn't slow down. Harold, he barked, we need to talk. You're on my property, uninvited, I said calmly. I'm recording this interaction. I don't care. His face was flushed with rage. You set up that legal scheme to steal from your own daughter. The trust protects my assets and ensures Emily inherits properly, I said. It's completely legal. Properly? Meaning unless she divorces me. It means my property isn't subject to claims by third parties, I replied. That's standard estate planning. He jabbed a finger at me. I am not a third party. I'm family. I'm your son-in-law. You're my daughter's husband, I corrected. You have no legal claim to my assets. The trust simply states the truth. His voice spiked, louder, angrier. I'll contest this. I'll get a lawyer. I'll make sure Emily never sees you again. You're threatening to isolate my daughter from me because I protected my property, I said quietly. Interesting. For the record, he spat, this isn't over. I nodded once. Leave my property. Or I call the sheriff. He stormed back to his car, tires shrieking as he sped down the driveway. I stopped recording. Reviewed the footage. Faces clear. Audio perfect. Threats unmistakable. I uploaded it to cloud storage and emailed it to Harlow with the subject line, Evidence, Hostile Confrontation. That night, I sat at the table writing a detailed report. Time, date, exact words, descriptions. No witnesses, but the video was stronger than any testimony. Harlow emailed back within the hour. Continue documenting everything. Get a medical evaluation ASAP. Expect retaliation. They're running out of options. The next morning, I called Dr. Laura Meyer's clinic and scheduled the appointment. Physical exam. Cognitive test. Full evaluation. By then, I already knew. This wasn't just about the cabin anymore. This was about my autonomy, my competence, my freedom. And I wasn't about to let them take any of it. Monday morning came sooner than I expected. I arrived at Dr. Laura Meyer's clinic 15 minutes early. The building was modern, single-story, efficient, designed to serve the rural communities around Redwood Falls. The receptionist handed me paperwork, and I filled it out carefully, requesting full copies of every test result and evaluation. When Dr. Myers called me back, I explained everything plainly. I'm 68, recently retired, and own property, I told her. A family conflict has led me to secure a baseline medical and cognitive assessment. I need documentation showing I'm fully competent. She studied me for a moment. Sharp woman, mid-50s, calm confidence. The look of someone who had seen many families torn apart either by genuine decline or by manipulation. I understand, she said. You're not the first person to walk in here with this concern. Family members sometimes challenge competency to gain control over assets. That's exactly what I'm trying to prevent. We'll do this thoroughly, she assured me. You'll have a written statement strong enough to hold up anywhere. The evaluation lasted 90 minutes. Blood pressure, reflex checks, blood work, vision and balance. Then the cognitive tests. Draw a clock that shows 3:15, she instructed. I drew it cleanly. Repeat these 3 words: apple, table, penny. I'll ask again later. I repeated them back after 5 minutes without hesitation. Count backward from 100 by sevens. I completed it smoothly. When we finished, she typed up notes, printed a formal letter on clinic letterhead, signed it, stamped it, and handed it to me. Mr. Harold Mercer is mentally competent, physically healthy, and fully capable of managing his own affairs. No signs of cognitive impairment, diminished capacity, or confusion. I paid the $240 fee, got receipts for my records, and left with the documents safely inside my portfolio. 2 days later, I was in my workshop shed organizing tools when an unfamiliar sedan rolled up the driveway. A well-dressed woman stepped out, clipboard in hand. "Mr. Mercer, I'm Margaret Willows with Adult Protective Services. I'm here regarding a complaint filed about your welfare." My stomach tightened, but I kept my face neutral. "And who filed this complaint?" "I can't disclose that during the initial assessment," she said. "May I come inside?" "Of course," I replied. "Would you like coffee?" "No, thank you. This is just a standard welfare check." I held the door open for her. "Before we begin, I should tell you, I'm involved in a property dispute with relatives. I suspect this complaint is part of that conflict." Her face didn't change, but her eyes did, a flicker of recognition. She'd seen this pattern before, malicious reports disguised as concern. "I'll conduct this objectively," she assured me. "If the complaint is unfounded, I'll document that." She walked through the cabin, her tablet recording every detail. Kitchen clean. Bills neatly organized in labeled folders. Refrigerator stocked with fresh food. Bathroom spotless. Bedroom in order. No hazards. No signs of neglect. No signs of confusion. She asked the same questions she asked hundreds of times a year. "Do you have trouble cooking, cleaning, or managing your bills?" "No." The complaint mentioned mental instability. "Have you experienced confusion or memory issues?" I opened my folder and handed her the full medical evaluation. She read it slowly. "This is exceptionally thorough," she admitted. "Most people don't come prepared with documentation this current and detailed." "I anticipated false allegations," I said. "I wanted evidence ready." "That's remarkably strategic," she said. 40 years as an engineer. Planning ahead keeps things from collapsing." I also gave her the latest financial statements showing proper management and the trust documents proving advanced estate planning. She wrote notes for nearly an hour. When she left, I felt confident but exhausted. 3 days later, Harlow obtained the complaint itself through legal channels. I sat at my kitchen table and read every line. It was worse than I expected. The complaint wasn't vague, it was an outright fabrication. Claim: Harold keeps firearms and threatened family members. False. I've never owned a gun in my life. Claim: he exhibits paranoia and installed surveillance cameras everywhere. The cameras were for wildlife and property protection. And they recorded Aaron's tantrum. Claim: he refuses medical treatment. False. I had just completed a full evaluation. Claim: he shows inability to manage daily tasks or finances. False. And disproven by months of organized documentation. Supporting statement, by Linda, claiming I endangered them intentionally with wild animals. The wolf incident. Twisted into a weapon made of lies. They requested mandatory psychiatric evaluation and potential conservatorship. I set the papers down carefully. My knuckles were white. They weren't just attacking my property anymore. They were attacking my sanity, my autonomy, my entire life. This was the moment I realized. They were willing to erase me as a person to get my cabin. 10 days after Margaret's visit, an official letter arrived. Case closed. Complaint unfounded. Her report was direct. Mr. Mercer is competent, independent, and safe. No evidence of exploitation, neglect, or cognitive decline. Recent medical evaluation supports this. Complaint appears motivated by property dispute. I placed the documents into a new folder labeled APS, False Allegations, adding it to the growing wall of evidence. The phone rang. Harlow. Harold, I found something else. Robert and Linda have been using your cabin address for mail. For what? Possibly benefits fraud. I see correspondence from Montana Social Services, First Summit Credit Union, and even the Social Security Administration. They used your address as their residence. I stared toward the mailbox down the road. I'll check it now. I grabbed gloves, got in the truck, and drove the quarter-mile down the driveway. Dust floated in the hot August air. I opened the mailbox and found 3 envelopes addressed to Robert Whitman, Linda Whitman, at my cabin's address. I photographed them from every angle, sealed them in an evidence bag, and drove back. Harlow picked up on the first ring. "Mark, I found the mail." "This is serious," he said. "Using a false address for benefits or banking is federal fraud. Combined with the camera footage proving they never lived there, this is strong evidence." "Report it," I said. "I'm done protecting these people. I'll prepare a package for the U.S. Attorney's Office." 3 days later, Assistant U.S. Attorney James Morrison called me. "Mr. Mercer, I've reviewed the evidence. You were right to report this. We're opening a federal investigation. I never gave them permission to use my address." "I saw that," he said. "We expect criminal charges within a few weeks." While Harlow worked the federal angle, he also dug deeper into Aaron's situation and uncovered something else. Emily and Aaron's home was 3 months behind on the mortgage. $8,400 past due. A default notice issued. "Harold," Harlow told me, "this explains Aaron's desperation. He was counting on your cabin to save him financially." I sat very still as the truth settled over me. His plan wasn't opportunistic. It was survival. Harlow continued. "There is another option. An unusual one. You could purchase the defaulted debt. Banks sell delinquent loans to investors at a discount. You'd own the mortgage through an anonymous LLC." I blinked. "Meaning, Aaron would owe me?" "Exactly. Would Emily know?" "Not unless you told her." I was silent. If I bought the debt, I could stop foreclosure. I could protect Emily. I could prevent Aaron from destroying her financial life along with his own. But I'd also gain something I wasn't sure I wanted. Leverage. "I'll think about it," I said. But by evening, as I walked the perimeter of my property, I already knew the answer. I wasn't going to let my daughter lose her home because of her husband's lies. The next morning, I called Harlow. "Do it," I said. "Buy the debt. But Emily doesn't know yet. Not until I can explain everything." A week later, the transaction was complete. $31,000 from my savings went to Mountain Holdings LLC, the legally formed shell Harlow created. Aaron received a notice that his loan had been sold, but not to whom. I labeled the wire transfer receipt and filed it under a simple, single word. Leverage. By mid-August, the entire battlefield had shifted. Robert and Linda were under federal investigation. Aaron's mortgage was secretly under my control. My trust made my property untouchable. Every manipulation attempt was documented. But I felt no victory. Only exhaustion. This was supposed to be a quiet retirement. Instead, I had been forced to turn into the one thing I'd never wanted to be. A man at war. I sat on my porch at sunset, folders stacked beside me, and made a decision. Emily deserved to know everything. All of it. I pulled out my phone. "Honey, can we talk? Can you come to the cabin this weekend? Just you." Her reply came minutes later. "Dad, what's wrong? You're scaring me." "Not over text. In person. Aaron has a work trip. I can come Saturday." "Good. This is between us." I set the phone down and watched the sky darken behind the mountains. Saturday, I would tell her the truth. And her life would never be the same. Saturday arrived crisp and clear, the kind of Montana morning that made the air feel sharper in your lungs. I woke early, not because of an alarm, but because sleep had been impossible. I cleaned the cabin, though it was already spotless, because I needed something to keep my hands busy. I prepared chicken salad for sandwiches, Emily's childhood favorite. Then I arranged the evidence folders neatly on the kitchen table where she would sit. Around 11:30, a car rolled up the driveway, dust rising behind it. Emily stepped out, looking worn, her shoulders tense. I met her on the porch and hugged her. She hugged back, but it wasn't relaxed. It was the embrace of someone bracing for impact. Inside, we started with coffee and small talk. Her students, the drive, the weather, circling the real conversation like it was a cliff we didn't want to approach. But her eyes kept drifting to the folders. Finally, she set her cup down. "Dad," she said quietly, "please. What's going on? Your text scared me." I took a deep breath. "Honey, there are things about your financial situation that Aaron hasn't told you. Serious things." She gave a small, nervous laugh. "What? Did he forget to pay a credit card bill? He gets distracted sometimes." "Emily," I said gently, "your house is in foreclosure." Her smile collapsed. No, that's impossible. We pay the mortgage every month. Aaron handles it." "That's what he told you." I slid the notice of default across the table. "Here's what actually happened." She read the document slowly, her hands beginning to tremble. This says the loan was sold to Mountain Holdings, LLC. Who is that? Why does that sound familiar? "That's me," I said quietly. "Technically, a company that I own through my attorney." She blinked rapidly, trying to process. "You bought our mortgage? Why would you even do that? How is that? What does that mean?" "It means instead of the bank taking your home, I prevented foreclosure. Aaron owes me now, not the bank." She pushed back her chair and stood, shock coloring her voice. "Dad, this is insane. Why didn't you just tell me? Why didn't you tell me the mortgage was behind? Emily, would you have believed me if I told you months ago? Or would Aaron have convinced you I was paranoid?" She hesitated. The silence answered the question for her. I continued, gentler this time. "There's more." Her eyes closed, as if bracing. "Aaron took out a $35,000 home equity line of credit against your house. Without your signature." "That's impossible," she whispered. "We both have to sign." "I never signed anything. I never even saw paperwork like that." I slid the HELOC documents toward her. In Colorado, under certain circumstances, one spouse can take out a HELOC alone. She stared at her husband's signature on the line where hers should have been. When she spoke, her voice cracked. $35,000? Where did it go? "Most likely," I said softly, "to cover some of Robert's gambling debt. Remember when you told me he lost $47,000 in online poker?" She pressed a hand to her forehead, shaking her head. "Aaron was trying to fix his father's mess by using our home? Without telling me?" "Yes." She sank back into her chair, stunned, hands covering her mouth. "I think we should eat something," I said gently. "I can't eat right now." "Please," I urged. "Your mind will need the energy." We ate in silence. The sandwiches might as well have been cardboard. Afterward, I showed her everything. The video of Aaron screaming at me on my porch. The APS complaint accusing me of paranoia, neglect, weapon possession. The federal investigation into Robert and Linda. The benefits fraud. The rental agreement they rejected. The attempts to manipulate her. The timeline. The proof. All of it. She listened at first with disbelief, then with confusion, then with deep, aching grief. When I showed her the APS complaint, the one where Aaron tried to have me declared incompetent, she broke completely. She cried like I had never heard her cry. Not soft tears, gut-deep sobs, painful to witness. I didn't say anything. Didn't touch her. Just sat there until the storm passed. Finally, she whispered, "How long have you known?" "Pieces since May," I answered. "Everything since July." "You've known for months that my marriage is a lie," she said through tears. "That I'm in financial danger, and you didn't tell me?" "If I had told you earlier," I said gently, "with no proof, would you have believed me? Or would Aaron have explained everything away?" She looked down, voice small. "I don't know. Probably not." "That's why I waited," I said. "That's why I gathered evidence. So when the truth came, it wouldn't just be my interpretation. It would be undeniable." She sniffed, wiping her eyes. I need time to process this." "You have until the end of August," I said quietly. She frowned. "What? Why? Why is there a deadline?" Because federal agents will arrest Robert and Linda within 2 weeks. Once that happens, all of this becomes public. Aaron will be questioned. Your marriage will be under scrutiny. And everyone in your town will know. Her face went pale. Dad, what am I supposed to do? You have a choice, I said. A hard one. Stay with Aaron, or leave him. Her lip trembled. How can I make a choice like that right now? I didn't sugarcoat it. If you choose to leave him, and file for divorce, I will forgive the entire mortgage. You'll own your house free and clear. She stared at me, disbelief and pain swirling in her eyes. So you're bribing me to leave him? No, I said softly. I'm offering you a lifeline. Whether you take it is up to you. But if you stay with him, I can't protect you from what's coming. Hours later, she finally stood to leave. I walked her to her car, carrying a folder filled with copies of everything. Before getting in, she turned to me. Did you ever think, she asked, voice trembling, about what this would do to me? Knowing all this. Every day, I said quietly. That's why I built such a strong case. So you'd know I wasn't exaggerating. She swallowed hard. I don't know if I can forgive you for waiting so long. I understand, I said. But I'd rather have you angry at me than destroyed because you didn't know the truth. Her eyes shined with tears. I need time. You have a week. She nodded, climbed into her car, and drove away. I stayed there long after the dust settled, wondering if I had just lost my daughter or saved her. 5 days later, on a Wednesday morning, I was sipping coffee on the porch when my phone rang. Harlow. Harold, he said. It's happening. Federal agents are executing arrest warrants for Robert and Linda right now. I set my mug down slowly. Thank you for letting me know. An hour passed. Then my phone rang again. Emily. Her voice trembled. Late September brought cool evenings and early sunsets. One night, Emily came to the cabin for dinner. We cooked spaghetti and salad, then carried our plates outside to the porch. The air was crisp, the mountains glowing orange and gold in the last light. As we ate, a small herd of elk emerged from the tree line, grazing in quiet patterns across the clearing. We sat in the 2 rocking chairs, hers new, mine worn, and enjoyed the silence. Dad, she said softly, thank you. For everything. For fighting for me. For being patient with me, even when I didn't understand. Emotion tightened my chest. You're my daughter, I said. I'll always fight for you. She nodded, eyes glistening. I know. But I still want to say it. We watched the elk for a long time. A large bull moved into the open, antlers catching the fading light. He's magnificent, she whispered. That one shows up almost every evening, I said. He's one of my favorites. She smiled, a real smile, one I hadn't seen in months. I think I'm going to love it here. It feels like home. It is home, I said. For both of us. Later, after she drove away, I stayed on the porch. The rocking chair creaked beneath me, the same comforting sound I had imagined on the day I bought the cabin. I looked out across the clearing, the mountains darkening as stars appeared one by one. In March, when Aaron first told me his parents were moving in, I felt my retirement slipping away. What followed had been a battle I never wanted, a battle for my peace, my property, and my daughter's safety. But I had fought it without cruelty, without violence, with documentation, law, patience, and persistence. The way a man who built structures for 40 years approaches every problem, methodically. Emily was safe. My property was secure. The people who tried to manipulate me faced consequences. And the cabin, my refuge, was finally mine again. Not the retirement I planned, but a better one. Because it was earned. I stood, stretching my back, feeling the years in my bones. Before going inside, I pulled out my phone and called Emily. She answered on the second ring. Hey, Dad. Just wanted to say good night, I said. Warmth filled her voice. Good night, Dad. Talk tomorrow. I ended the call, stepped inside, and closed the cabin door softly behind me. Outside, the mountain air was still. The stars bright. Peace, true, earned peace, settled over my home like the September night. If you enjoyed this story, please like the video, subscribe to the channel, and share your thoughts in the comments. To listen to the next story, click the box on the left. Thank you for watching.